Happy Sunday morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today? Welcome to the Krewe NFC Roundtable. Thank you all for joining us. Got Brian and Andy with myself. Football's finally here, sorta. NFL preseason underway. How we doing, gentlemen? Always
I'm
excited.
here.
So, I mean, Andy, let's just get into it. First round draft pick, number 1 overall, Caleb Williams goes out and does
4 for 7 for 95 yards. Little over 100, what is it, 108 or 108.6 on the QB rating. So he actually didn't do too bad. There were a few intangibles, I guess you could say, that he's actually, running, scrambling, throwing. I mean, that was actually kind of nice to see accurately. That is, for the most part. But you see how his receivers, when they seen that he was in trouble, how they kind of sort of stopped doing what they were doing and came back for the ball. They did that on a few occasions, I would say, and it's weird what happens when stuff like that occurs. But yeah, unfortunately, no touchdowns, but at least no interceptions, so that's definitely a plus. But again, the intangibles are certainly something that you like to see, especially in a young quarterback. Even though he has tons of experience on a big stage, this is the biggest. So,
well, what was nice was the plays that he didn't make, so to speak. Like he didn't throw into coverage. He didn't force the ball anywhere. He played within his means. He let the offense develop around him. He didn't make any big rookie mistakes in his first full action sort of NFL. You know what I mean? It's NFL football, but you're still basically playing second, third, fourth. This first couple of games, he's not going to see any real competition, but it's nice to see the fundamentals showing through, right?
Oh yeah. And again, footwork, I guess, is something that he still needs to work on. His release has always been, not necessarily normal or not necessarily, static, whatever the case is. He's like Patrick Mahomes in that sense, how he can actually throw the ball in kind of sort of any different little direction, any sort of angle. And Williams isn't anywhere near that as of yet, but you can see how, the improvisation is actually something that he definitely looks to potentially, sneak out of the bag every now and again, which is fine. But you can only do that 3-4 plays out of the game, because then people are going to be like, oh, well, he might do this. So next thing you know, you're going to be throwing interceptions. So if he can actually stay under 20 interceptions, I think that would definitely be a major plus throughout the year.
Staying within the pocket will help him stay. You know what I mean? He plays out of pocket a lot, and I don't mean like off script. I mean he rolls out quite a bit. But if they can keep him within the confines of the pocket and keep him upright and keep him protected, I think he's got a good future. I was very skeptical of him at first until I saw how he transitioned into the NFL. I mean, he can throw from any platform. He has a great release on the ball. He might have rubbed a few people the wrong way how he came into the locker room, but I think the future might be looking up for the Bears again.
Sure. So there were a couple things. So, for example, when he does scramble, because he's even through college and stuff like that, he was never your like typical pocket passer where he's going to stay and throw the ball and get hit. He's always going to move around and things like that. Okay, fine. I would say 7 out of 10 plays you see him end in a different spot from when he started. Okay. Somebody's going to teach him how to actually slide. I don't know if you've seen when he ran a couple of times and then slid. His slide in and of itself is one of those herky-jerky type of things where, you could actually end up pulling something, breaking something, whatever the case is. And the offensive line, unfortunately, with the injuries they're actually going through again already, he's definitely going to have to make sure that he stays as healthy as he can be in case he does have to run around and things like that. So
that's exactly how I was waiting for you to obviously be done with your comment, but that would, or shut up or whatever you want to do. But actually, what I was actually going to say, that was the big problem, was the offensive line. I mean, there should be. I mean, he's gonna, it's it's already sad that they're already having all these problems. Nobody knows what's going on with Nate Davis, and it sounds like he's becoming more of a cancer than anything else. Makes me wonder if the Bears are going to try and make one of those last minute, waiver pickups once they start cutting rosters down and start bringing some guys in, because I got a feeling they're going to cut them. And that. Granted, he's a talented individual, but the guy's never liked the practice in his life. That's why he's already burned bridges with other teams. So,
yeah.
But what I saw, I'll tell you what, he had 2 throws yesterday that I was like, wow, that's something I've never seen a Bears quarterback do.
Complete a pass.
Go through progressions. Go to
the left side of the field.
You can tell that
keep going.
I know, but you could tell that he had command. And that's the thing. And you were right, Andy. When he was in trouble, you have your smart receivers out there coming back towards him to help make a play. It was like completely different to see a team that has always been inept to do anything offensively to actually look like a cohesive unit out there, even though, there's definitely holes in the offensive line right now. And it did show, but it was nice to see what Caleb Williams was able to do to get out of the pressure, get out of the trouble, made a couple good throws on the run. And, you could definitely tell he looks the part. So it'd be nice to see him play, the next preseason game a little bit longer, get him some more drives. Yes. Would you have liked to score it on one of those drives? Yes. But to take from what you just saw, it was really refreshing to see an offense that's could actually be pretty damn good this year if all the cards work.
Yeah, and you don't even have his receivers out there. You're playing with second and third string receivers. They didn't play very long with any of their starters.
Right. What does actually make that kind of interesting is the fact that you can see an upside. It's just when you actually, the whole honeymoon thing is over. What's that downside going to be? Is it going to be 7 out of your 5, offensive linemen injured, which very well may be the case. You remember last year, even the year before, how they had so many injuries that they literally had even their reserves were actually injured. So, it's and serious injuries, not like a bump on the head, a sprained ankle, nothing like that. You're talking breaks, pulls, tears, that kind of thing. And it's just for some reason I'm not really sure why the Bears every year always have the same type of issues offensive line. Either they're practicing too hard, not hard enough. Who knows? But you're absolutely right in the fact that the receivers in and of themselves, they might only play just a handful of plays, but what you actually see is making something that's potentially a joy. You have, for example, rushing wise, this again is like an offensive line kind of a thing. But Wheeler, 5 attempts, 43 yards, 2 touchdowns. Of course, those were within distance. Billis Jones actually looked pretty good in consideration. Herbert did well. From what I've seen, he did okay-ish. There was a few that he was actually hitting the backfield that I would like to have seen at least make the freaking line of scrimmage. But DeAndre Swift, 1 reception, 42 yards. That was actually kind of interesting. Pettis, 3 attempts, 1 reception. Sweeney, Cole Kmet, 2 for 1. Even DJ Moore got into the act. But, they were all relatively low receptions and things like that. You don't necessarily see a lot of out and about 40-plus yarders. You might have had one. It might have been a 25 that ran for 40 yards. And that's actually one of his strengths is actually his accuracy on the deep ball. It's that intermediate, I think, is one of the reasons why you see relatively short passes, because that intermediate is really what he still needs to work on. So I think he's used to, college and stuff like that, where if you give it a few seconds, somebody's going to break open. That kind of thing. They chuck it down the field. So,
do you think the Bears' offense reflects more of a short passing offense this year rather than the, run, set up the play action pass, roll the quarterback out? Do you think they're going to play more towards pass to set up the run this year with short passing game and then maybe take a pop here and there?
Like actual quarterbacks and stuff like that, yes. So with the offensive coordinator, anyway, we'll get off the offensive coordinator just simply because with the quarterbacks, I don't know if they weren't necessarily playing to their strengths, and I've actually mentioned this on a million different occasions. They weren't necessarily playing to the quarterback's strengths. This particular quarterback is actually a little bit deeper passing type of a quarterback, pretty accurate consideration. His intermediate, of course, is again what we have to work on. But the cool thing is, if by chance you have that opportunity to be able to actually do, out of 4 downs, 2 of those are going to be passes that are going to be 10 yards plus, you're going to absolutely open up that run. Then you of course have Swift, and you of course have Herbert, and you of course have all these running backs that could potentially break 5, 7, 10-yard runs at a pop. Oh yeah, then you got Cole Kmet and the rest of the tight ends that could conceivably also open up that flat area, opening up the run even more. But we still need to worry about the offensive line. It all starts basically at 0. So the offensive line, as long as they can stay relatively healthy, all of that stuff is going to be able to potentially come to fruition. So we'll see how it ends up.
Your schedule lines up for you. So, I mean, the Bears could be sneaky good this year, especially playing the schedule they have. So
potentially. And like I said, stat-wise, for the last 2 games, of course, they were nothing but preseasons. But, still you're impressed with the fact that, so far, 1 game, no interceptions. Cool. Even if he's going 5, 7 yards at a pop, whatever the case is, no interceptions. Especially considering that, if you're starting deep in your own zone, 15, 20, 25-yard, well, now with the new kickoff rules and stuff like that, who knows? But, yeah, as long as we don't turn the ball over, that's going to be a major plus there, too.
Yeah.
But what
do you guys think of the new kickoff rules?
They're interesting for sure. I mean, you see that, of course, in the other leagues and stuff. And the good thing about that is I understand why they're doing that. They don't necessarily want to have any more concussional injuries, things of that nature. But I think didn't we talk about that? We read it or something like that, that if you actually put a quarterback in the backfield, you could conceivably draw everybody to one side, have them chuck it to the other side, and have a nice wide open, run.
Yeah, it's taken a while for the block and everything to develop on that. I mean, you would think that somebody would develop trick plays out of that, but right now I'm still not convinced it's going to really change the game much. You got to kick it into the return zone. You can't kick it into the end zone. You can't, it's going to be different.
Obviously this was all to stop the basically automatic touchback that everything's been going on. People want more action, It was either it was you were yes. If they could have just easily said we're not doing kickoffs no more. You start at the 20 automatically, right? So what if what if they implement this plan and say the returns go up? That's what they're banking on, and I think. So far I haven't seen anything to where it screams at me this was like the best change. But I am interested to see going forward how this will work. And to Andy's point, about bringing up, we discussed about maybe you put a quarterback in on one side or whatever. I've been hearing rumblings from other teams that it might be one of those where you put your running back as your kickoff returner because they're the ones that are always used to finding the holes especially when you're lined up the way you are. And they might be those things where you're going to see running backs taking kickoffs more than these, gadget speed guys because they're not, they're used to taking the kickoff where everybody's running and the field's spread out where everybody's convoluted at the start. You've got to bust through the line. So
Taysom Hill should shine in this system.
It could be.
You know what I mean? Where's Tim Tebow when you need him?
That's true.
That's actually a good question. I think he probably would get himself a roster spot if he did something like that, but I don't think he wants to get hit anymore.
Yeah. Think of all the gadget players that you could use. They're already talking Justin Fields could be one of those that doing that in Pittsburgh. You mentioned Taysom Hill, Cordell Patterson. There's just so many of these gifted gadget guys that's like the perfect spot for them.
You know who would be good back there is that running back in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson.
Who? I've never heard of him. How about,
But anyway.
how about Kyle Trask?
Ooh, we're not going to touch that yet. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We're not going to touch Trask? Wait, what?
Mike's sweating bullets over there.
I'm hoping Dallas picks him up. Anyway, Brian, Green Bay played a little bit, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't like they were playing. I mean, the Browns played none of their starters, so it's kind of like, okay, this is like a glorified practice, right? But all Jordan Love did is third play of the game, throw a 67-yard touchdown pass to Dontavian Wicks, and it was perfectly in stride. Now, if you're playing the Browns' first team defense, is he going to do that? Well, who knows? But it still looked good, right? But other than that, I mean, you came out of there with no real serious injuries, and that's what you want. You got Love a little bit of action out there. I'm sure he'll play more next week. Other than that, there just really wasn't anything that I could just scream and say and report on and say, okay, that looked really, really good. That looked really, really good or whatever. Because, I mean, to be perfectly honest, when you're not seeing the starters out there, you just don't know what you got anyways. But
100%.
So,
and go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say 4 years, $220 million contract. I think every single pass that he throws should be a touchdown or an interception for the Bears.
So,
yeah,
your comment kind of resonates really well with what I wanted to talk about, but I didn't think we talked about it this early, but I'll bring it up. We can table it. We can, throw it away, whatever. But I really think with them going to 18 games, that's the plan next year, right? 18 games. You have all these preseason games that no starters are playing in. Why doesn't the NFL just start a minor league organization to where they can get guys reps, get them plays, let them put some film together, for other teams, not even their own team. It works for Major League Baseball. It works for the NHL. But the NFL seems to think that the college is the only way to go with this. I mean, I think there was like 12 to 14 players now on active rosters in the NFL from the UFL last year. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe it's a dumb subject, but I really think that's something that should be addressed or at least considered by the NFL.
It's certainly a potential. I think that was actually some of the talk that had been for years, really. Remember when they first came out with the the United Football League before, when you had like Jim Fossil, who was actually one of the coaches, and then those guys. Oh, we want to be like a farm system for the NFL. Cool. AAA, AA, that's fine. What are you going to have? And it makes sense, especially considering that of the thousands of players that actually come out of college every year, how many actually get to play? Now you have the Canadian League, which has been around for decades, of course. The NFL, the World League or NFL Europe or whatever they call it. You have teams in Mexico, teams in Japan. Matter of fact, I think it was the under 18 or something like that United States team that was getting pounded by everybody. So
yeah, it was like that. That was just a rich kids team, man. Every person on that team paid $5,000 just to play.
Right, and you see the results. You're losing by like 20. 3 touchdowns, stuff like that, 4 touchdowns, and this is supposed to be an American game, man. Come on. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense to a point. But then again, the product that you're going to get is going to be one of those things where you might have one of those like Division III guys or something like that makes an NFL team just because they're still big enough, they're still strong enough, still fast enough, and they can learn around the competition and stuff like that. I think Green Bay had a couple of offensive linemen that were like that. But generally speaking, if you actually going from take like Kurt Warner for example, like Northern Iowa, not to necessarily point out Northern Iowa, but even like Carthage College, places like that, small places. Do you really think that the competition is going to be, so that you're going to have that opportunity to be able to bump up, even if you're playing against guys of the same caliber?
Well, I mean, the cream always rises. So if I'm not saying you pay these guys hundreds of thousands of dollars, but if I'm coming out of high school, college, and I'm like offered $40,000 to play football 6 months out of the year, I'm playing football 6 months out of the year. And if the NFL could, I mean, they have the means to fund something like that. I'm not telling anyone how to spend their money, but they have the means to fund something like that. You'd give more opportunity to players, coaches. It's endless possibilities there. What up, Andy?
So real quick, let me ask you this. Now, if by chance you go with like a farm system similar to baseball, which means every team has their own farm system,
right?
You're looking at 30 plus teams. You're looking at literally, I mean, how many games are you going to play? I mean, now you have to look into like injuries and things of that nature. So let's say you have somebody on the pro level that it gets hurt. You can call somebody down from your AAA. You can't because he's hurt. I'm not saying that you have to play flag football, nothing like that, but it's going to be, it's certainly one of those things. And are you going to be going about the same schedule? Are you going to be doing different schedules? Summer, fall, that kind of thing.
Right. No, I get it. I was just thinking that it's a way. It's got to be better than this preseason football.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, you think about that. It's going to happen. The 18 games is going to happen like very soon, right? I mean, we're thinking a couple years, right? So you have to, first of all, you'd have to implement 2 buys. So then it makes it a 20-week season. So then after that, you're going, okay, starters already aren't playing in preseason games. Why do we need preseason games at all? I mean, does college football do that? They don't play preseason games. No. Now, yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's called directional schools, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems to me it would be more beneficial to, get, like, say you need a 3 or 4 week ramp up period to get to where you are ready to roll to actually do some scrimmages. Why can't you roll out a preseason of, a 4 week ramp up period, get yourself in shape, and then you practice for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Say you're scrimmaging another NFL team. You're just not playing any games, but then you just roll into week 1 without any preseason games. Because I mean,
then you take
to me,
away.
What's that?
You take the revenue away.
Did you just raise ticket? Well, they're going to raise ticket prices regardless.
Right.
I mean, it's just it really doesn't matter. It's that NFL owners are going to do what they want, and if they want to recoup that loss of money from preseason games for what, to host 1 or 2 preseason games a year, then you just raise regular season ticket prices. You're going to end up adding an 18th game anyways. So
yeah.
Well, with the court case, where they lost DirecTV and all that stuff, and they have to pay back trillions and trillions of dollars.
It's they didn't lose anymore. They got overturned.
Of course, it
looks
did.
like you're waiting for your check.
All I know is the current plan that they want basically $400.
Right.
Yeah. It's
so.
And sadly, America's going to pay it because football is king. Mm-hmm. So whatever. The new NFL kickoff rule is to protect players so they can show reduced injuries, so they can go add that 18th week to generate more revenue and put players in more risk for injury. But they're not adding any more players to the roster or anything like that, which would benefit the players but hurt the own. I see what you're saying. They do what they want. I get it. My bad.
And see, that's actually an interesting point too, because if you're going to have extra games, if you're going to have like a farm system, whatever the case is, especially for the playoffs, why can't you expand your roster? Or if you have 53-man roster, why can't you have 60, 65? Right. I'm not saying you have to be like a college team that has 110 players, but it does make sense.
But I mean, honest to God, I'd be all for the whole JV varsity thing, where you do, for a cheaper ticket, you can go watch the JV team play. you're still going to generate revenue. People aren't going to get sick of football. It's not going to happen. They prove it every year. They talk football. We talk football all year round.
Yep.
It is what it is. But anyway, let's get back to preseason banter, I guess you will. You guys see how bad the Saints are looking? I mean, they did win, but you got your starting quarterback who went 2 completions, 12 yards. Now you think, okay, he probably only threw 3 passes. They didn't want to get him hurt. 2 of 6 for 12 yards. He looked like absolute garbage. Now the whole internet's like, get rid of Carr. Let's just play Spencer Rattler. He's younger. He's, going to lead us back to the playoffs or whatever. What's going on in New Orleans? Why is Derek Carr struggling so mightily? That offense was established. I mean, they've been good for years. Is it that Derek Carr is just that bad?
Well, are they playing to his strengths? That's always the question. Are they playing to that particular quarterback's strengths? I understand that the offense is kind of locked into what it is, but if you got a quarterback that's better on the run, let him run out. For example, Caleb Williams. Okay, fine. Lamar Jackson, he can always extend plays with his legs. But if he's a pocket passer, let him be a pocket passer. If he's good throwing to his left, guess what? Let him throw to his left. Is that what they're basically doing? Granted, he's no Kyle Trask, throwing for 144 yards, but if they actually, okay, I got
20.
You what?
12 of 20 for 144 yards.
12 of 20, 144 yards. One interception though,
and a pick. Should have been 2 or 3.
But if that's the competition you're looking at in the South, I think your JV team will probably end up being the South champion. That's the problem.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, didn't we talk about the Saints a couple weeks ago when we were going over the divisions, and we're just like, hey, here's the Saints. In a division where it might only take 9 wins to win, but could they actually get there? And we pretty much all said, as long as they have a turnstile of an offensive line, there's no way in hell this team's going to make the playoffs. And I think what you saw in this game, and then this is just me reading a little bit of the game notes, was the offensive line was a major problem. And Derek Carr has never really truly been one of those quarterbacks who's on the run. He could be dangerous. He's not. If you get him out of his comfort zone, he's horrible. And that was the problem in Vegas. And you saw that when he didn't have an offensive line or he didn't have his weapons. I mean, in his career, that's Derek Carr in a nutshell. It's unless he has the perfect blocking or the perfect weapons, he is a very imperfect quarterback.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. Do you think that the quality offensive lineman isn't where it was, let's say, 5 years ago? As the defensive line, with their stronger, faster, grease lightning type of defensive end and stuff like that, and very athletic defensive tackles, are they like above and beyond where your offensive linemen are?
Let me say this. Let me say this about that. The game itself has changed, right? It used to be pocket passer. Give me 3 to 5 seconds. Give me time to hit that back plant step and get rid of the ball. Now it's give me 12 seconds. Give me 13 seconds. Give me time to set my feet, pick my feet up, scramble to the right, set my feet, pick my feet up, back to the left. It's not the same football anymore. So your offensive linemen have to be better athletes. They're no longer just a set drop, set up, pass block, get engaged, get under the pads and control. It's set up, set block, let the defensive player recoils, and we're moving the pocket. The pocket's not stationary anymore. I think that's a big difference in how, the offensive line is looking and how they're playing. And the game's changed. And I don't think the offensive line across the board, across the NFL has caught up to that yet.
So that's where you're also getting the different types of tight ends, specializing in blocking, specializing in those catches and stuff like that. It's just kind of an interesting, situation scenario when you're talking about it. And yeah, I see what you're saying, that you have to be able to, hold up for literally. Case in point, what was the average? Like Peyton Manning, he'd get that ball out. What was it? 2 point something seconds, 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And so now, if you're looking at 5 to 7, even Caleb Williams was doing that. Where he was holding the ball just simply too darn long. And so now I see where you're coming from, and that's an interesting point. But what do you think is going to happen to the offensive line? Do you think they're going to get smaller, faster?
I don't think you can. I think you just got to get more athletic.
Sure.
And I know that sounds terrible, but you got guys like Tampa, Tristan Wirfs. That's an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He can move, he can block, he's power, he's speed, but he's going against guys like Vita Vea. Vita Vea, power, speed, athleticism. I mean, Vea was a halfback in high school. So it's not like you're getting these offensive and defensive linemen that are just offensive and defensive linemen. They played other positions. Now they're transitioning to offensive linemen instead of growing up as offensive linemen.
Yeah.
It's just going to take time for the game to adjust. It always adjusts. It always catches up. Michael Vick was impossible to stop until he wasn't. It just catches him. So does Derek Carr finish the season? Do you think he finishes as the starter in New Orleans?
I don't know. What's Jameis Winston doing again?
Jameis is in Cleveland.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it's the Spencer Rattler show, isn't it?
Spencer Rattner or Hainer, that the dude with the photo shoot.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. All I will say is we all know that Derek Carr is injury prone, and I have a if you want me to answer the question, he won't finish the season because of injury. It's not going to be because of his play.
See, I'm thinking that the fans are going to get restless, and a coach that's on the hot seat is going to have to do something. And I think you might see a haste decision based on trying to keep the fans and the owner happy.
Well, didn't that just happen in Vegas, and that's why Carr left?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah. But anyway, so Saints over Cards 16-14. Falcons lose to the Finns. Penix he was all right. He was 9 of 14 for 104 yards. Nothing spectacular, nothing, to put him into the limelight. Just enough to keep him, I think, as the, number 2. He's secure there. He's not expected to play anytime soon, which I think is a good situation for him to be in, especially be behind a guy like God, I can't think of his name right now. Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, he doesn't play the same style of offense, but I think it gives him time to at least watch how a NFL game is directed by someone that's done it for so long.
Managed.
I think that's a good position. Sir?
How the game is managed.
There you go. Better than directed.
So that's the other thing too, because Penix he's actually very, very accurate on deep passes. That was always his thing in Washington. And hey, you know what? Give him some time. He's going to be able to find your 30-yarder, no problem. Who knows?
Yeah.
Kurt might get hurt again.
And Kurt's not exactly a young chicken. You know what I mean? He's up there in age, and I think Penix is in a good situation to where he can step in and lead them if needed. I think Cousins will be healthy for the most of the year. Atlanta seems to be like a team that's on the up. They seem to be doing things right. But again, you got a new coach, new offense, new quarterback. So it's going to be a change, but the whole South is basically going to be a change. So it's anyone's division. I think Atlanta's in a good position right now.
There's no place for them to go but up. Because they were not a very solid team last year, even the year before.
Well, you do get to play the Panthers twice a year, who is possibly the worst team in the NFL. And I don't see that getting better this year. They're going to give the Giants a run for their money as for who's going to get the first pick again. So there's nothing really exciting going on in Carolina right now.
No.
At least they're better than the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Oh, they're the repeating NFC South Division champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They did play last night in probably the most exciting game of preseason so far. I mean, honestly, the late goings on in that game was actually exciting. It kept interest. And I mean, last second lead change under 2 minutes. Bengals take the lead. Bucks drive right back. Get to the 20. Stall, 4th and 7. False start, 4th and 12. Throw to the end zone, pass interference in the end zone, so you get one play to put it in the end zone. I mean,
exciting.
It's preseason football. You got to take what you can.
You beat a quarterback who's come back from wrist surgery. Ooh, that's exciting.
Anyway, Trask did well enough to leave everyone scratching their head asking, what are they going to do with Kyle Trask? 12 of 20, we already said, 144 yards, but he did have a pick on a poorly underthrown ball into a man that was well covered. A couple balls sailed on him. Had a few more that should have been picked. Wolford came in, was 12 of 18 for 131 yards, had a great grasp of the offense, led them down in the closing minutes, like I said, to get the lead. Strong run by Jefferson, forcing the ball into the end zone with, I think, like 57 seconds left. But what I did like coming out of that game, though, was a couple players that you weren't expecting to see a lot from was Tanner Canoe, wide receiver, young kid, unsigned rookie free agent, had 2 catches for 29 yards, had a great kick return. What I liked about the kick return is the fact that he let the blocking set up and then, made a move off of that. And that was one of the things I've been trying to watch a lot. Like I said, this kickoff is going to either make the game so much better and so much more exciting, or it's going to just ruin it completely. Because you got the traditionalists that like hey, let's line up, let's smack the crap out of each other and go play football. And then you got the guys that are like, well, I should be able to do an onside kick on any down or any point in the game, no matter what. If that rule's in place earlier, like let's say 20 years earlier, the Saints have no Super Bowl wins. I mean, that onside kick rule is going to change the game.
Oh, yeah.
I really think they need to address that pretty quickly. But like I said, Tanner Canoe had a great return, set up the blocks very well. Bucky Irving looked explosive carrying the ball for the Bucs. 6 carries, 28 yards, averaging 4.7 a carry. Had a touchdown on a great cutback through the center of the defense. And Raheem Jarrett looked good as a wide receiver. He's going to have to fight to make the roster. He'll probably be like your 5th or 6th receiver. But he looked good going up for the ball, catching it at a tight point. But like I said, it's preseason, so you don't really know what's going on there. But I do know that Kyle Trask is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Say it every year. I don't know why we wasted the pick. Wolford looked great. Here you go. Give me Wolford. I agree. I mean, he's not going to take you to the promised land, but I think he can come in, mop up duty. He can come in and say you have an injury late in the game. If the Bucs have a quarterback like Baker Mayfield go down for an extended period of time, I do not feel good turning to Kyle Trask and giving him the keys to the car. I mean, you're going to let him start for 2 to 3 weeks. I don't see that ending very well for the Bucs. But
is it here's a question then. Is it truly there's going to be no competition here for the backup role, or are we looking at a competition?
I don't think there is, unfortunately. I really think that Kyle Trask would really have to mess the bed, so to speak, to be ousted as the number 2. You put a 2nd-round draft pick into him. This is his last, chance. I think after this year, he's gone if he doesn't get thrown into starter duty due to injury and have a Jeff Hostetler type progression, or it even better, Tom Brady progression would be great, but I just don't see it. I just don't.
So you're saying he's a solid number 2?
I'm saying he's A loose 2 at best.
How close?
So, how'd the rest of the division look for you guys? I mean, you're up there in the north. You got JJ McCarthy getting his first, real live action as well. The north is going to be different this year.
The interesting thing, I'm glad you brought up JJ McCarthy, because I was reading some things about the game yesterday, and actually the game was on where I was at for a little bit, so I was kind of watching. And obviously you didn't see any of the first team, like Justin Jefferson wasn't playing or anything. But, Sam Darnold did play, but it was only for like one possession. And then they took him out, and McCarthy played basically most of the game. He struggled, he struggled early, but I feel like later on, but this could also be what we've been talking about. You could be seeing him play against second, third string people, and he started to look better, But the thing is I questioned, why did you even put Darnold out there to start, even for one series, if the rest of the starters weren't even playing at all? If Darnold's going to be your starting quarterback, then why was he even out?
I'm not sure he is. I think you might be looking at a situation where they're like, nobody is given a position in the NFL. You got to earn it. You know what I mean? So, like, on paper, I can write, I'm going to pay Brian $30,000 and put it on paper. I'm not going to pay you $30,000, but I'm going to put it on paper. You know what I mean? It's just paper. It's nothing. They're just putting it out there to say, hey, this is the starter. You've got to earn your job. I think it's McCarthy's job to lose. And if he doesn't, play drastically terrible in these preseason games, I think he's the starter going week 1. I mean, why would you waste your time putting someone out there that's not your future?
Right. I mean, he did good statistically. I mean, granted, he threw a pick, but he was 11-17 for 188 and 2 tutties. I mean,
yeah,
can't complain about that.
Again, you're looking at a team that's not starting over, but I think they're plugging in Kirk Cousins 2.0 and hoping it's a little younger, a little better, faster version. That's all I said.
I think the next thing I want to see is him with the number ones, and when he's got Justin Jefferson out there, and all those guys, and see how he looks there. If he looks the part with those guys, I mean, then yeah, I would be starting JJ McCarthy in a heartbeat over Darnold. I mean, Darnold's been given his chances everywhere. Honestly, he was a ruined quarterback, but if McCarthy's this legit, you took him the first round. I think you have to play him now. You have to start him.
There is something to be said. Like I said, Michael Penix's situation is great for him in Atlanta. He's behind Kirk Cousins. He's going to learn how to manage a game. He's going to learn how to play within your offense and play within your means. When you've got Sam Darnold starting in front of you, and Sam Darnold has done absolutely nothing in the NFL, what are you learning from him? What is he teaching you other than this is how you break the huddle? I mean, what is he teaching you? What is he offering? He might have a great mind. He might have a great football mind, and he's someone you can pick the brain of on the sideline. He could be your professor in that quarterback room, but he doesn't have to start for you. That it doesn't make sense to me. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things he could probably teach you is how to, keep your stiff upper lip, your head up when, three idiots on some small podcast are busting your chops about, being a terrible quarterback. So, but
wow.
there are other things, oddly enough, than football to being a professional quarterback. Your attitude. Would you prefer to have somebody you remember Jay Cutler when he, of course, was playing? It didn't look like anything at all fazed him. Or would you rather have somebody pick even like a Baker Mayfield, for example, who wears his emotions on his sleeve, and you see exactly how it's going at any given time? I mean, who would you rather have?
I honestly, it's more of how the locker room takes it, right? If you have the veteran team, you could have someone like Baker Mayfield. You can have someone that's going to fire into you and yell at you and scream at you. And I mean, Tom Brady, look at Tom Brady, right? He built the culture that he could succeed in. Him and Bill Belichick built that culture. Tom Brady, if he's on anyone else's team, he's a crybaby. He's egotistical. He's an asshole. He's, throwing what is it? The Microsoft or whatever. He's breaking screens. He's deflating footballs. He's slamming helmets. He's yelling at players. If it's not in the right culture, if it's not in the right locker room, that's what you call a cancer, right? Jay Cutler, when he was throwing fits on the sidelines, was a cancer in Chicago because Chicago's locker room was not mature enough for that.
See, but you also are kind of sort of bringing all the things that Tom Brady did may have led to his overall success because of the fact, deflated footballs make it easier for the receivers to catch, and all the stuff that he was doing. I'm not saying that he was a cheater. There was some success, but I'm just saying that there was a reason why, he was doing a lot better than everybody else. And it wasn't necessarily because Belichick, because you can see definitely wasn't him. Ever since Tom Brady left New England, I think they won a game, I think.
It's the culture, Andy. That's if you play football for a coach, right, that's always yelling, screaming, but motivating, and then go to play for a coach that's soft-spoken, that doesn't really motivate, and you're not a self-motivated person and isn't really in your face, you're like, what the hell is this guy doing? This isn't a football coach. But if you go from the soft-spoken coach to the yeller, you're like, what the hell did I do wrong? It's culture.
Sure. Same thing like your quarterback. What you want an emotional quarterback or you want an emotional coach? Here's a case in point. Lovie Smith. Did you ever see him yelling and screaming on the sideline?
Absolutely not. But that's my point.
So would you rather have a Lovie Smith? Would you rather have a Belichick?
Myself personally, I respond better to a Belichick type coach. However, the locker room I'm in would dictate that. Your coach has to know the locker room he's in charge of. Your quarterback has to know the offensive scheme and offensive players that are around him. If you're just out there yelling and screaming, you're pissing people off if they don't give you that respect and they don't feel you've earned that respect and that culture isn't established where you're at.
Dan Campbell's another perfect case in point, another example.
Exactly. I love that. And
of a yeller screamer and stuff like that. But I think it works in Detroit. Yeah. Again, would it work in Chicago? Would it work in Tampa? Would it work in Green Bay, for example? Green Bay, they seem to be more quiet than anything else. But maybe that's what the quarterback needs. Maybe if you start yelling at him, maybe he'll get the happy feet and throw 4 or 5 interceptions.
You know what? You got a point, because when the Packers had Ray Rhodes as a head coach for one season, Ray Rhodes was a fiery individual, and all it took was one season, and Green Bay already fired him because they did not like the way he,
didn't like his approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And if your culture doesn't fit that, you're gonna alienate a lot of people, including your fan base.
What?
You didn't hear me?
No.
I said if never mind.
My phone reset itself.
Oh. Basically what I said was you're going to alienate a lot of people and your fan base if your culture is not set for that. If you're not built the way to handle that, it's going to show on the field and it's going to show in the press and it's going to show to your fans, and your fans are going to want you out. Jake Cutler was probably one of the toughest quarterbacks in the league at the time. And the Bears drove him out of town because he said he was hurt and they didn't believe him. I mean,
well, he also had an offensive lineman that was so porous, he ended up getting hit, sacked 70-something times and hit like 190-something thousand times. It was just one of those things. If you get up after every hit, shake yourself off, and you just kind of swallow what you want to say, cool. Then when you are injured, and he ended up having to have surgery on his knee after the fact.
Yeah,
he should have been given the benefit of the doubt for sure. But then again, your offensive line was so bad.
Well, think about this too. I mean, I've always been a Cutler defender on the Bears. Never gave him a true chance to thrive, especially when he's going through 5 different offensive coordinators. I mean, how are you going to have any cohesiveness at all if you're constantly switching your OC every year?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about last week, even the week before, or 2 weeks ago. In the fact that it's just a vicious cycle. Somewhat recently in Chicago, new head coach, new quarterback. Okay, cool. Now you have a new offense. Now you finally learned that. Well, it's not really working out. New offensive coordinator, new coach, new quarterback. It's just like this cycle.
Circle of suck.
Right. and so if you have, and that's where it might that culture, you might have actually switched a little bit in the fact that you stayed with Eberflus, which okay, not necessarily a fan of that, but you've been able to actually establish at least the same quarter or the same coach. I'll wait. Sure. Same coach,
But yeah,
relatively same offensive coordinator. You still have some of the other guys, receivers, for example, who have been in that offense that can actually teach the new guys. So,
yeah.
But
that really was a great question that strayed us into many, many different avenues. So, what are you guys' thoughts going forward? I mean, do you play your starters next week? Do you set your starters another week? Do you give them 1 week to ramp up before the season? I mean, do they play at all?
Well, this would be obviously this is theoretically preseason game 2, right? So
Except for the Bears and Texans.
Except for the Bears, yeah. So in my opinion, this is the week where you've got to play your starters at least the first half, in my opinion. And you got to see what you got. And let them get, let them feel the game come back to them a little bit. And then you use that that last preseason game to work on your depth as a team. Again, I know that injuries are always going to be a part of this game. You don't want to get any of your starters hurt and stuff like that, but you also don't want to come out week 1 crapping the bed either. So
right,
you've got it. There's got to be a perfect medium on it.
So with combined practices or teams playing against other teams in practice, you see a lot less starters playing, but these practices are getting really chippy.
Oh yeah.
It's going to get to the point that they're going to be like, okay, no one's playing anybody until game time. But I think that's when you see the most work as a coach, is when you're playing your number ones against their number ones, your number twos against their number twos, rotating people in out game situations. I think it's where you're going to get the best looks. However, you got to put a product on the field to give the fans something to look forward to and to look into watching, because that's where your revenue is. So it's a weird position to be in, being in, an NFL franchise with 3 preseason games, and now there's not the buffer game for your starters. I don't know if I play my starters. You see it in practice. You know what they have. Why put them out there to risk the injury? And I know you can't play the game thinking you're going to get injured. But if you don't, I don't even know how to put this. If you put them out there and they get hurt, you're the biggest clown there is, right? It's like, why are you playing them?
Right.
I agree, Christopher Cole. Thank you. But if you do put them out there and they play well and there's no injury, it's like, see, it was no big deal. But it's a big decision. If they're out there to play and they get hurt, you're done. Your season's over.
I get it, but then you don't play them And week 1, week 2, week 3 comes around and they're crapping the bed all over the place because they don't have any cohesiveness, because they have not been in game situations, then what do you say to that? Because it's like, I mean, the hotter start you get in this league, the better the better your fortunes are at the end of being in the playoffs. You don't want to start 0-3 and have to play comeback.
Then that's why it's this NFL season is perfectly orchestrated that all the games matter. It's not like Major League Baseball where it's like, oh, I lost 3 games here, 3 games there. I can make it up with a 12 at the end of the season. Every single game is crucial. Derek Stevens from the Plunder says the right call was to get the reps of the backups and depth players. Depth is one of the absolutely, but that the issue is just going into the next game, Derek. We're trying to justify playing your starters and they get injured and then you're where. If Baker Mayfield goes down for the Bucks and you've got to rely on Kyle Trask, your season is over. 100%. Even in the weak NFC South.
But then you still have to be able to play yourself in the actual game shape. Because you know, of course, how things are a little bit faster during the games, things are a little bit harder, that kind of thing. And if you're not used to it, you know, that's one of the reasons why you do, like, you know, 2 days in high school and, you know, in college and stuff like that, where you're sitting there and, of course, you have to get physically ready. Now you have to get mentally ready. That means, you know, taking those hits and stuff like that. You know, maybe that's one of the reasons why the Bears' offensive line is in bad shape as it is now, because they were just practicing too hard, not hard enough. Everybody has the same issues. It's just one of those things. Where do you find that balance?
I'm saying at most you play him a quarter. You don't run the risk of getting injured.
So how about this? How about you actually have like a particular schedule to where, let's say your training camp is like 12 weeks. Just an example. So the first 3 weeks, you know, receivers, quarterbacks, that kind of thing. Your second 12 weeks is like, you know, defensive line, you know, whatever the case is. And then your last weeks, of course, is when you start when you bring in the offensive lineman to be able to actually do your thing. I understand you need time to be able to get timing and get plays and to get all this other stuff. I get that, but, you know, I mean, it's just like the players themselves, the practices and stuff have to evolve to where you're not starting the season with half your team on the injured list.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but anyway, we're coming to the end of the show, gentlemen. Any closing thoughts you might want to share, or besides go Bears?
Well, I got one. Go Packers. Go. Like it. Go.
So all I can say is it's almost over. The drought's almost over. We're going to get real football very soon. College football starts, NFL starts, and it's real football. It's not this practice on television that's gets harder to watch. I can honestly say the Bucs game was fun to watch pretty much all the way through. Not all are going to be like that.
You guys are still waiting for real football in championship.
Do you realize the last time the Bears won a Super Bowl, there were still rotary telephones connected to walls? I'm just asking. I'm asking for a friend.
I got one right now. What do you mean you're asking for a friend? And speaking of rotary phones, that was the last time you had hair.